recap on the content. So welcome to day 2. Thanks for coming again. Those of you who came yesterday, thanks for coming to day 2. Those of you who it's your first day, hopefully you've had a chance to look at day 1 information, but I will just recap on day 1. This week is all about helping us to reconnect with what really drives resilience and productivity in the workplace. And very often we think that's all about to-do lists and prioritization, and it is, and we'll come to that once we get beyond the first couple of days, today and tomorrow. Then we're going to start talking about prioritization from Wednesday onwards. And the reason we do it this way around is because very often we overlook some of those true fundamentals of resilience and productivity. So let's just recap on day 1 and check in on some actions. So on day 1 yesterday, we talked about the importance of sleep. And it's not very often you go on a program and they'll talk about sleep, but it really is so overlooked as an opportunity to increase resilience and to build productivity. Because what we discovered yesterday was that, you know, if you don't prioritize sleep, it can have really damaging effects on your cognitive function. Same effects as if you've been drinking alcohol if you are sleep deprived. So we have to get sleep top of the agenda. Then we talked about, as well as making sure that we get the right amount of sleep, and everyone's slightly different, but it's somewhere between 7 and 9 hours for most people. Once you've got that sleep routine in place, and I appreciate yesterday was day 1, hopefully you were able to put something into place yesterday in terms of your sleep routine. But once you get that sleep prioritized and you're able to then get that stabilized in your life, then we start to think about morning routine. So the second thing we talked about yesterday was, what is your morning routine? And starting to think about carving out some specific time at the start of every day so that you are able to prime yourself. You've got this specific window every morning where you set yourself up for success in that day. And I shared mine. You don't have to use mine, but I shared it as an opportunity just to kind of hopefully give you an alternative perspective. And I talked about, you know, asking these, we call them power questions, asking the power questions of yourself first thing in the morning, just to prime yourself and get you thinking differently about, you know, your life, your work, what you're about to do in any given day. And then to start to think about how do I visualize and rehearse a really good day ahead so that you're preparing yourself for a successful day. And then thinking about getting your body moving and generating energy so that your energy level is optimal for you as you enter the day. And then some kind of mindfulness or calm so that it allows you some free thinking space early in the day so that you get clarity about your day. So that's day 1. I'd love to hear those of you who were with us yesterday, or those of you who have looked at yesterday's content. I'd love to hear either in the chat, or if anybody wants to drop me a quick message. Richard says good morning on the chat. Thank you, Richard. I'd love to hear what were your thoughts and reflections on yesterday? What's happened since yesterday? Maybe there's a change to your morning routine. Maybe there's a change to maybe the way that you approached sleep last night. I'd love to hear in the chat what's changed for you in the last 24 hours since our last session. So just either in the chat, or if anybody wants to come on and have a quick conversation, I'm very happy to welcome you on and let you have a quick chat if you'd like to do that before we start this morning.
Yeah, I don't mind saying a word, Justin.
Good morning, Joe. Thanks for joining us. How have you been over the last 24 hours?
Hello, really good. Sorry I was late joining, just trying to get the kids organised.
That's okay.
The first thing was the sleep. I've got these smelly things, you know, you were saying about aromas or all of that. So I thought, I'll move it from my computer desk up to my bedside table. So I did have a good sniff of that. And I got some hand cream, which is supposed to be sleep lavender or something. So I did do that. So that was nice.
And did it work, Joe? Did it soothe you before you?
I think so. Yeah, it was very pleasant. Yeah, it was lovely. I slept very well. Sometimes I wake up in the night and my mind's buzzing. I did wake up, but I went back to sleep quite quickly. And this morning, rather than lying in bed waiting for the alarm, thinking about stuff, and then sometimes falling back to sleep, and then you feel worse when the alarm goes off, I did actually get up earlier. And so my morning routine started earlier. So instead of missing out on my Calm app, I fitted that in
this morning.
I was planning to do some extra yoga as well, but because I needed to be ready for 8,
because I forced you to be up early this morning.
Well, it's not normally I do that, when the kids are getting ready, or things jiggle around. But no, it's
Yeah,
really good. It's really good. So thank you.
excellent.
The only thing
Pleasure.
was, I woke up thinking about your 3 questions, but I couldn't remember the middle question.
Okay, I'll go over them again in a second. Brilliant.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
So
Joe.
yeah, no, great start to the week. Thanks, Justin.
Excellent. Pleasure. Thanks for coming back, Joe, and thanks for sharing. That's really good. Before I remind you of the 3 questions, let me just catch up on some of the comments. So thank you for the comments, everybody. Manjula says, I disciplined myself to get lights out and did my yoga routine. So excellent. So really useful way to just start to calm before you're about to sleep. Because the body, remember, the body and the mind need to calm before they sleep. Otherwise, we'll find we just don't quite get off as easily. And once you get that final routine before bed down to a routine that works for you, you sleep straight away. And you tend to, as you experienced, Joe, even if you wake in the night, you tend to sleep better if you're trying to get back to sleep. Thanks, Manjula. Molly said, put my phone down half an hour before bed instead of scrolling while in the bed. And that's a really, it's interesting because blue light, there's a lot of evidence about blue light making the brain really alert. So if you're scrolling before bed, any screens before bed, within half an hour, the mind is like really heightened. So then sleep becomes more difficult. So that will hopefully that was useful for you as well, Molly. Thank you. Steve says, more intentional about setting up the day. No phones before or after sleep this morning. Feeling much better for it. Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. You're looking absolutely bang on, Steve, this morning, if I may say so. And then Pretty says, put the phone to charge half an hour before bedtime and put thoughts in a book. Nice. A bit of journaling for Pretty. And then what else did Pretty say? Enjoyed being up a bit earlier today. Hope to keep it up. Brilliant. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. That's great to hear that you've already started to experience some of that. What I would say is, if you can get this in, if you can do this for if you can do this for a period of time, you'll be surprised at the impact this has, because it's like anything in life, right? The more we do something, the more it compounds. So getting this as a routine really does start to help you be more focused, more resilient, and more productive, which is the whole idea, of course, of the challenge. So thank you. The questions I asked. So yesterday I shared 3 questions that I ask myself every morning. I did it again this morning. So the first question is, what am I most grateful for in my life right now? And the subtext is always without anything else having to happen. So I don't need something else to make me feel grateful for where I am here and now. The second question is, what am I most excited about in my life right now? So you want to start to build energy as you enter the day, right? What am I excited about? And this morning when I asked and answered that question, this session was a big part of what I was excited about today. 8 o'clock, I've got this session coming up. And then the third question is, how do I make sure today is a really brilliant day? Or you choose your words, but how do I make sure today is a day I enjoy, is a day that I create value, all that stuff. And you ask. The key is you have to ask and answer the question. Okay, so ask and answer. Joe, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. There was the excitement I forgot about, which is probably
Pleasure.
one of the best things, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
And just going back to the sleep thing, I forgot to say that I was listening to the audiobook by Viktor Frankl. Is it the Auschwitz guy?
Yeah.
What he said about going back to sleep, if you wake up in the night and your brain's whirring, or anything that you want to change, is there's a paradoxical insight, where it's not insight, I can't remember what the word is, but anyway, basically where instead of lying awake going, oh no, my mind's whirring, I can't get back to sleep, and watching the clock ticking away, actually you say the opposite. So you say, oh, it's fine, my brain's whirring, and almost laugh at yourself at how much your brain's whirring, and it's I don't know how it works out, but apparently psychologists say this
it's like acceptance, right? So it's acceptance instead of resistance. Yeah,
Yeah.
I must admit, if ever I wake in the night and I need to get back to sleep, I say 3 words to myself: I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm tired. And it's surprising how quickly that sends me back to sleep. And it is about giving the brain a target. What is it we want to go after? It's a bit like today's session, actually, because this morning we're going to talk about mindset. and how that plays a part in resilience and productivity. So nice segue. Thank you, Joe. Nice segue into today's session. So let me share my screen again, because I stopped sharing while we were having that conversation. Thanks for the feedback, everybody. I'm glad you're finding this useful. And thanks for being on the journey this week. I think it's going to be a really, hopefully you'll start to see where all these pieces connect as we go through each day. So reminder of our fundamentals of health and well-being, because without the overall health and well-being, resilience is compromised, right? We want to build as strong a resilience as we can in the way that we work, the way we go about our lives, and every part of kind of relationships and how we function. So we need sleep, rest, and recharge. We need some form of movement and exercise on a regular basis. We need good nutrition and diet, and we need to feel good about ourselves. So we need to have good, strong, positive mental health and well-being. And understanding that these things ebb and flow, right? Sometimes we'll prioritize them more than others, depending on our commitments, but actually having them as foundations and recognizing that we need to have these as fundamentals is really useful. So let's talk about the mind and productivity. I love this work. There's a guy called Sean Aker, wrote a book called The Happiness Experiment, which is a great book. Lots of scientific evidence in there, but one of the pieces that very often gets pulled out, and it's the bit that really resonates with me, is that your brain, when you are feeling positive, when you put yourself in a positive frame of mind, your brain is 31% more productive than your brain at neutral, negative, or stressed. This is really interesting, because just the way that we're thinking, the way that we manage our mindset can change our productivity in any given day. And, we've all had those days where you wake up, you might feel like, you're a bit sleepy, a bit tired, you might be a little bit stressed or worried about something, and your ability to perform is compromised, right? And so are your teams. So we have to recognize this for ourselves. Actually, one of the first things we can do, this is why the priming in the morning is so important, the gratitude, the excitement, the visualize a really brilliant day, or whatever your version of that is, because it sets you up to be positive as we enter the day. And we know that positivity and productivity are linked, okay? So we start to think about where this plays with mindset, and there's lots of studies on mindset, and lots of benefits of it. But if you have people who start to think about having a growth mindset, start to think about reframing the things that happen in their day in a more positive way, which is really what we're trying to do with the growth mindset, reframe what we experience to be positive, then people who are able to do that successfully have lower incidences of anxiety and stress. They have higher levels of happiness, and all of this can be measured. They have higher levels of performance and output, and we've seen that already from Sean Aker's work, 31% more productivity. They have stronger immune systems, and we looked at this, there was a link to this with sleep as well, you remember from yesterday's session, that the body releases and generates these chemicals while we sleep that strengthen the immune system. And if we don't do that, if we don't get enough sleep, then we compromise the generation of cytokine, which is our immune system response from the body. And of course, it improves resilience, which is the whole part of this challenge, right? So we increase resilience through mindset. And as if you needed any further convincing, it actually lengthens life. So people who have a positive outlook tend to live longer. And that's a big part of, not only does it lengthen your life, but the time that you're here is more enjoyable because you're positive about things, right? So there's no downside to this stuff. But this is more than just, happy, clappy, being positive. It's really thinking about being opportunity focused. And one of the things that I find fascinating is this. There was this study by the American Psychological Association where they took a group of basically the general public, and they were asking them about, what happens on a day-to-day basis, what thoughts happen. And what they recognized was that the mind's job, all of our mind's job, is to generate thoughts, okay? But what's interesting, on default mode, 50% of the time, our mind generates negative thoughts. So we go to either negative or defensive or this assumed negativity in the thoughts that we have. And I think we can all relate to that. And then 20% of the time, we think about neutral thoughts, so things that aren't negative or positive. And then only 30% of the time does the mind automatically default to positive thinking. So if we know that a positive frame of mind makes us 31% more productive, we really do have to work on this. We have to think, how do we keep reframing and bringing ourselves back to a positive thoughts and a positive frame of mind? So important for us. And if you're leading teams, essential for teams and their productivity as well. So how do we do this? Once we know that this is something that's important to us, how do we do it? So the first thing is start to become aware. So we become aware of the way that our brain automatically thinks. What are the thoughts that we go to on a regular basis? And sometimes they'll be positive, sometimes they'll be negative. But that awareness in the first instance allows us to think about whether or not we can change, right? So recognizing, where do I go by default, and what is automatically happening? Once you become more aware, you create this space. And it's interesting, Joe mentioned the Viktor Frankl book, which the book is called Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist. And in the second half of the book, he develops a model, a psychological model for thinking. And he was one of the first psychiatrists who really thought about this principle of stimulus and response, that something happens, things happen to us all the time. And actually between things happening and us responding, there's a gap. And we really start to try and open up that gap so we create clearer thinking space for ourselves. And this is what really we're thinking about with growth mindset. So thoughts happen, they may be positive or negative. Once we're aware of them, then we can start to direct our focus and the thoughts towards what we want, not what we don't want. So towards positive thinking, towards the right outcomes that we're looking for, because that's going to change our state and change our ability to be productive. And then the other thing that's linked to this, which is really useful, is to recognize that we all have this inner voice. So if we think about the way the mind works, you've got, thoughts and processing, and in particular, then we have this kind of commentary that goes on in the background. And the inner voice, it's really useful to start to notice that, because for many of us, that's again on default. It just happens, it's chattering away in the background. And what we want to start to do in psychology, the name for the inner voice is the inner critic. So that's what it's called. It's called the inner critic. And actually, we need to start to recognize that if that voice is overly critical, that it's ours to start to redirect and guide. So we go from critic, and I like to think of the most effective transition is from critic to coach. So instead of that voice undermining us, we transition it to start to get it to ask us more empowering questions. And then finally, when we start to think about the voice and all of this work around mindset, for many of us, these are ingrained habits. So we'll very likely have to set up some triggers in the environment that help us to change. And when I first learned about these principles, it was around 2003. I trained as an NLP practitioner, which NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It talks about the impact of the mind on the body and the nervous system and how they're connected and how you start to reshape and reframe your thinking. And one of the things that they advised us to do on the program I was on was to set up these triggers. So effectively, because your mind will slip back into default thinking, just set up some reminders. So I used to have Post-it notes. At the time, I was a sales manager, field-based. So I used to have Post-it notes on the dashboard of my car. I'd have Post-it notes in my study at home on my computer screens. I had a reminder that used to go off on my phone on a daily basis. I had a little Post-it note in my wallet. So basically anywhere I looked, my environment was reminding me to come back to some of these principles because it's so important for us. Joe, I'm going to carry on and take your question at the end, if that's okay. But then as we think about developing our inner coach, we have to think about questions. And the great thing about our mindset is that we'll answer the questions that we ask, right? So we'll answer the questions that we ask. So then it's down to us to ask better questions, right? And it's a bit like, all of these things join up, right? So the 3 power questions at the start of a day are designed to get us to ask higher quality questions, right? What am I grateful for? What am I excited about? How do I make sure today's a brilliant day? 3 questions that can only be answered in a positive, with a positive response. So we really think about the questions we ask, and that sows seeds for us to become better and more productive, right? So if we think about developing the inner coach and starting to train that inner voice, there are lots of things we can do, but some of the questions are really useful. So in any given situation, if you meet, a difficult day, how is this here to help me? Does it make you more resilient? Does it help you feel better about yourself when you overcome these challenges? What do I need to learn from this? How will I use this as an opportunity? How do I grow from here? And what will I change next time? So you really start to build out questions that become default for you, that really help you become more proactive and positive, because that's the foundation for resilience and productivity. So all of these things start to join up. And recognizing that the way we think about ourselves in the world is a big driver in our mind for how we then operate in the world. So we might have to, if this is something that's useful for you, you might have to start to work on identity as well. How do you see yourself? How do you want to see yourself? How do you start to use that as a way to increase your value and contribution within your work and your life? These things are really useful. So as I was going through that, some things will have come up for you. So just an opportunity to reflect on today's topic, which was your cultivating your growth mindset. So we're starting to hopefully stack some things here, right? But while you're thinking about this, a moment just to reflect and drop into the chat, or if anybody wants to come on, Mike, you're very welcome. But just what are you thinking in terms of how do you start to weave in some of these principles of cultivating your growth mindset, becoming aware of your thinking, starting to direct your thoughts, starting to think about managing that inner voice. So I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Jonelle, good morning.
Hey, Justin,
how are you doing?
I avoided the camera. Yes, thank you, and apologies about yesterday. I will listen to that, watch the recording. Just wanted to say, I think I totally agree. Positive productivity, totally agree that. And I find, especially when I'm stressed out, I pop down to the gym for half an hour, or go for a walk. I find exercise does help me reduce our cortisols and be more productive. So totally by that, and that's kind of my mechanism, if you like to.
Yeah, so it's the way that you manage stress, John. Kind of some exercise or a break from the office, a walk or something to get the body moving. Yeah. It's interesting because there's a lot of work being done on this. You're absolutely right, John L. And I've seen that one of the most effective ways to manage stress actually is walking and talking, right? Because when you walk, it's good exercise. It gets the blood flowing and the energy up, but you get lower release of it lowers cortisol levels as well, which of course is the stress hormone. So there's lots of evidence in this space around light exercise, talking things through as well, because that helps you with mental processing. And actually, I mean, I was listening to a podcast this morning about reducing the amount of digital exposure in our lives, particularly related to phones. I appreciate that's a little bit ironic with us being on a Zoom call, but really thinking about reducing the amount of time that we're attached to devices and thinking more clearly, just like about life and about what we're really trying to achieve and how we go about our day-to-day activities. And that really does help us with cognitive processing, and people do it less now because any downtime we tend to automatically pick up the phone and become consumed by that. So actually creating some space in your day is really useful as well. Yeah, good. Thank you, John Al. Thank you. Excellent. Good to see you as well. Joe, your hand's raised.
Yeah, just two things. I've just put in the name of a book in the chat, Playing Big by Tara Moore.
Nice.
She's written it for women, but actually anyone can benefit from it. But she talks a lot about the inner mentor, which is your inner coach. And what she says is that the inner critic is really loud and is shouting at you continuously, whereas your inner coach speaks softly and you have to ask for their advice. So that's why it's not so prominent, but you can learn to tune into it, and it's really good how she goes through all sorts. Like I said, it is written for women, but there's a lot of stuff in there that anyone can benefit from. But what that just reminds me of what you were just discussing there about going to the gym or going for a walk. Do you remember when we did your course, Justin? Samir did that little session, and he was talking about the reset. how you lift your arms up and
Yeah.
down and breathe in and out, and then you do your superhero pose. So
Yeah.
you've got your full lung capacity to take that breath, and you just, whatever situation you've just been in, you take that pause physically and mentally, and then just reset. So whether it's, you know, the next patient coming in after a difficult patient, or if it's, you know, whatever in
Next
your day,
customer, or yeah.
that, I think that if you haven't got time to go to the gym for half an hour, basically, you know, a quick 60 seconds can be really quite
it's the
powerful.
reset. Yeah, and it's interesting because it kind of links to the mind-body connection, right? So sometimes the mind, you know, we talk about productivity, positive mindset. Sometimes we can use the body to reset the mind, right? So the kind of power pose, couple of long deep breaths, arms up, get energy circulating, and then put your body in a position where you would feel confident. Then your body can then start to direct the mind, right? So the body is then saying to the mind, this is how we feel when we're confident and energized. And it's surprising how effective that is actually in just getting
you
you
just
to
imagine
reset.
you've got your Superman cape flowing behind you, Justin, you know, when you're in that pose, and then you're ready for anything.
Positive visualization, bulletproof. Yeah.
But going back to what you said about the reminders, the you know, post-its or alarms or whatever. I think that's a great idea to have things set up which will just ping at you, but also to have something visual. So, you know, like you said, you've got your desktop is your vision board, isn't it? So you've always got that bringing you back to the positivity and the goal. And I think I'm going to have to start doing that. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, pleasure. Is any way to stop ourselves going to default, because default tends to be, you know, probably lowest common denominator, and we really want to find a way to just give ourselves that reminder that we want to stay on track, keep ourselves focused, and it going in the direction that we're really planning for our lives and our work. Excellent. So we are approaching the 1/2 mark, believe it or not. Half an hour just flies by in these sessions. I will ask you to think about, so let's build on these two topics. Think about sleep routine for tonight and how we get to the right level of sleep and energy. Think about morning routine for tomorrow. What do we need to do to give yourself the optimal morning routine? And then finally, think about mindset and how do we start to direct our thoughts and our focus, and some of those, you know, potentially some of the ways in which we show up, because that will really help us to kind of be more productive and generate this level of resilience that we're looking for. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. I will let you go. Tomorrow morning we're back to 8:30. So today I've got an 8:30 call. That's why we've brought this forward today at 8. But I will see you all tomorrow at 8:30. Have a great day. Hope you enjoy working on this, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow and hearing how you're getting on. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Justin. Take care.
Thank you. Pleasure. See you tomorrow. Thanks.